Hi, it's Jen and welcome to my channel. Welcome back if you're a returning subscriber and welcome if you're brand new. I post new videos every Saturday, and if you're here for my minimalism journey, don't worry, I'll be posting a new video on that by next Saturday or earlier. My channel is all about personal growth and living an intentional life, and this video is all about the 7 tools I used to live through and to get over the pain of my father's suicide, which happened in 2011, and really helped me to gain the resilience that I have today. For the first few months after my father's suicide, I really wondered if he was destined to live an unhappy life due to his brain chemistry, and if I was destined to that same end, if I was destined to commit suicide and live an unhappy life because I'm related to him and because I felt so depressed and sad at that time in my life. Now, 6 years later, I am happier than I have ever been in my life before, and I really believe that these 7 tools helped me to get there. So in this video, I'm gonna tell you what the 7 tools are, and in the future, I plan to make a video on each of the tools, and I'll make this a playlist so you can really dig deep into these tools that I really think gave me the resilience to just live on and expand and become the best version of myself I could possibly be. If you've lost someone recently or have been through a tragic event, I really hope that these tools can help you, and feel free to email me, and if you have any questions or just want support, I'd be so happy to talk to you and help you through this really, really hard time in your life. And even if nothing tragic has happened to you, I really hope that these tools could maybe just help you take your life to the next level. The first tool I used was journaling. I've always been in love with journaling since about middle school, and I've always been an overthinker, so journaling has always helped me to get my thoughts down on paper so I don't have to keep rethinking the same thoughts over and over again, because I see that they have a place on paper, and I can kind of work through whatever's going on in my head better when I write it out on paper. Usually in the past, I could just, journal about my problems and usually solve the issue in the same session. When it came to my dad's death, I definitely did not overcome it in one journaling session, but I did a lot of journaling sessions about this, and here's the journal that I wrote in after my dad died, and there's a few things that I did very early on. The very first thing that I did in my journal since he died was I made a list of things that made me happy. I also made a list of things that I wanted to remember about my dad. I wrote a short journal entry. I wrote a letter to my dad. Actually, I wrote multiple letters to him. What else? I wrote things that I like about myself. I wrote poetry. I started planning a documentary in my journal, which never came to fruition. And just, I journaled a lot about the meanings of life and what I wanted to do with my life, trying to understand myself and figuring out the things in life that made me happy. When I make my video that's on journaling, I will make a downloadable worksheet with prompts that I didn't use any prompts, but I will use my journal from after my dad died as inspiration for prompts for maybe people going through a tragic period that want to journal about it but don't know where to start. I'd be happy to make that for you, and I will make that in the video that I make on journaling. The next tool I used, which is similar to journaling but still different, was creative writing. So when I was that year, senior in high school, that was the year he died, I wrote a poem called It Wasn't the Scream, and I read it in my video Overcoming My Father's Suicide, which I'll link below. I can also link a blog post with the poem in it below. But the poem was basically me just working out, processing my emotions, and basically when I say it wasn't the scream, that means or the scream never, so the last 2 lines of it is the scream never ended, we just stopped listening. And to me at the time, that meant that the pain of his death is always going to be there, and we just stopped listening. Or it's more like the sadness, the fact that something horrible happened and it will never go away, but you don't have to always pay attention to the horrible things in the world. But it's a great poem. If you want to read it, I will post it below. Next, when I was a sophomore in college, I wrote a short story called Kickball, which is about the first time I felt purely happy after he died, which was about 3 months after I played a game of kickball, and I just rocked at that game, and I just felt such pure joy, which I hadn't felt since then. And so that's kind of about processing how I felt about the small things in life can be what make you the most happy. It's not at the time I was asking these profound questions like, what's the meaning of life? Can everyone be happy? Can some people not be happy? When really those questions were too huge for me to look at that time, because I was at such a depressed state that all my answers were just very, very bleak. But something as simple as a kickball game brought me back to joy. Then the summer before my junior year, I started writing a novel, and I wrote about 40 pages, and it's very detailed about everything I can remember from when he died and then like those first few months. And I don't know if I'm gonna ever continue that novel because it's pretty dark, but definitely writing it helped me work through emotions that went on during those first few months. Even years later, it was helpful to work through that. I love that through creative writing, you can share your story and you could even be used to help other people. So I definitely look forward to making a video about creative writing and creating a worksheet with prompts on how you can write your own story in whatever way you want and whatever format, poem, short story, novel, whatever you want. The third tool I used was reading a lot of fiction. I read so many books early on. I was always reading a book, and the book that helped me the most, which might help you if you've lost someone to suicide, was the book Looking for Alaska. I'm not saying that Alaska committed suicide, but basically in the book, the main character loses his friend Alaska, and she died in a car accident. I don't remember if it was like drunk driving or what, but a big question for him was whether or not she did it on purpose, and the whole book is about him trying to figure out that mystery. And that really resonated with me because I too was curious about what was going on in my dad's head before he died. Did he know that he was going to do it? Like, did he know how much pain he was going to cause? Was there anything that I could have done so that that didn't happen? Like, those are such tragic questions to ask, and I was asking those questions, and the main character in Looking for Alaska was asking those questions, and the book kind of helps you work it out, and it really helped me work it out. So I recommend that book for anyone who's struggling with something similar to that. And then I also really love Haruki Murakami. He is a very popular writer in Japan, and his books are translated in English, and his books are so good. They're very beautifully written and detail oriented, and they're also very trippy, except for Norwegian Wood. So if you want a trippy book by him, don't read that one. I recommend Kafka on the Shore, and if you want a long one, I read IQ 84 that year, and it's 1,000 pages, and it was good for me though. I loved getting home from school and then like reading 80 pages a day just to feel like I was like making progress in that book, and I just lost myself in it. And I don't usually recommend escapism, but if you just went through something super tragic that's out of your control, sometimes it can be good, at least for those early months, to lose yourself in a really good book. And I recommend Haruki Murakami if you have no idea what to read. The next tool I used was painting, but I'm sure you can replace this with any other type of artistic hobby. But for me, I never considered myself an artist. In middle school, I would always get B's on art homework. No matter how much time I spent on it, I would always get a B or an A minus, and it was devastating. So I knew in high school I would never take art. I would take chorus instead because I didn't want to lower my GPA for the sake of art class. But I basically found myself painting one day, and it was just so therapeutic, and I loved it so much that I ended up signing up for continuing education art class that was at my high school, just like after hours, like at like 7 p.m. on like Thursdays or something like that. And in the class there was like 2 middle schoolers, me, and then a bunch of older ladies. But it was really, really great for me, and I painted this painting in that class. So this is El Salvador, and I could just really lose myself in like painting these like light details and like the green up here. It was just so therapeutic for me, and it was like a new hobby that I loved. And I also painted another painting that year. I'll show you right now. I also painted this. I clearly love painting landscapes and nature and like finding beauty in this stuff because I didn't see beauty in much, but I could see beauty in the landscapes, and I loved attempting to recreate it in my paintings. The next tool I used was Neuroscience. In one of my classes, we watched a video of this young girl who had epilepsy, and they removed half of her brain. And then over time, the other half of the brain that wasn't removed learned to take up the functions that the other half of the brain was doing. So that's called neuroplasticity. And I thought that was amazing. And I was like, if this girl's brain can like lose half of itself and relearn how to do it, my brain should be able to learn how to be happy despite going through tragedy and despite maybe even like predisposition to depression, because God knows my dad must have been depressed if he killed himself. And I just was passionate about learning more about the brain and decided that I was going to study neuroscience in college, and that I was going to find a way to like compare depressed brains to happy brains and show how someone can go from depressed to happy. Like, I was like giving me a whole new meaning in my life. So I fell in with neuroscience at that time, and it really helped me to like just look at plasticity. And there's so many good books on neuroscience that can prove to you that your brain is capable of changing habits, changing attitudes, and being whoever you want to be. The next tool that I used was goal setting. So I was in health class, and our health teacher wanted us to pick a goal to do for the semester, and throughout the semester we would have check-ins with a partner. And she explained how her goal at one point in her life was to do triathlons, and since then she's been doing triathlons every year. And I thought that was so cool. I was so inspired by her that I wanted to do triathlons too. So I made it my goal that year to do triathlons, and I ran, I swam, I did bike rides every single day after school. And it was just my passion. It was my new thing. I read books about triathlons, magazines, blog posts. I just loved training for triathlons, and it was just something I did every day. And I think that definitely helped me to keep my mind off the pain and to create a new goal and move forward and just do something that's completely unrelated to thinking about my dad, but rather just moving forward and doing cool new things in my life, which leads to the last tool that I use, which is exercise. Obviously, with triathlons, I did a lot of exercise, and I'm sure we all know that exercise is very good for you. And even though today I no longer do triathlons, I'm more into yoga, I can definitely see the differences between when I exercise and when I don't. And I highly recommend that, as much as you may not want to, try to exercise if you've gone through a tragic event. These were the 7 tools that I used to get through my father's suicide, and I hope that they can help you too. Let me know in the comments below if you use any of these tools already, and if any of these tools are new to you but you could see yourself using in the future. I plan to make a video for each of these tools, so stay tuned to that for that if you're interested, and subscribe if you want to definitely see that. Like this video if you liked it, and yeah, subscribe again. Like, I make videos about personal growth, intentional living, resilience, minimalism. So if you're interested in any of those things, subscribe and share this video with anyone who you know has been through something tragic recently, or even just think that they would benefit from hearing some tools to help them just like live a happier life. All right, bye.